This is PTV World. I am SYED SHABAHAT and you are watching Fault Lines. Narendra Modi's India remains to be a hotbed of violence. This violence is not only killing the racial minorities, but has also made a target to the religious minorities. In a country that calls itself the largest democracy of the world, in a country that says its constitution rests on the principles of egalitarian justice for people from all creeds and caste, for a country that is founded on secular principles of Gandhi. Unfortunately, the situation has turned on its head. Muslims, Christians and Sikhs have become subject to violence by the state. And not only BJP is providing ample grounds to its angry mobs to destroy lives of the people, but also it is stopping the law enforcement agencies to take appropriate actions. Team Fault Lines have prepared a package. Watch the package before I bring my first guest to the program.
India's rising tide of Hindu nationalism is an affront to democratic ideals and civil liberties. The continued targeted attacks against religious communities, dehumanizing rhetoric, including open calls for genocide against Muslims, is commonplace in BJP's India. India has slid from 140th position in the World Press Freedom Index in 2014 to 161st this year, its lowest point, while also leading the list for the highest number of internet shutdowns globally for 5 consecutive years. There has also been demolition of properties owned by Muslims in the name of removing illegal construction, and a ban on wearing the hijab in classrooms in Karnataka when the BJP was in power in that state. The United Nations Human Rights Office described a 2019 citizenship law as fundamentally discriminatory for excluding Muslim migrants. In reports on human rights and religious freedom, the State Department raised concerns over the treatment of Muslims, Hindu Dalits, Christians, and other religious minorities in India, while also listing a crackdown on journalists. During his visit to the United States, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi denied that discrimination against the minorities existed under his government and refused to take any steps to ensure the rights of minorities. The BJP's Hindutva doctrine has sowed poison against Muslims in the minds of the masses, resulting in gory incidents of cow vigilantism, public lynching, and humiliation. Hate crimes and violence against India's large Muslim minority have increased since Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office in 2014.
Ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this very pertinent issue, I have today invited a human rights expert in our studio. Her name is Khan, and she frequently speaks about the human rights violations in the South Asian continent. I welcome you, Aruj, in the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Aruj, first things first, so we are talking about this human rights violation in India. What do you believe can be the root causes? Because most of the time when we talk about these violations of human rights, we're talking about the surface events. We're not addressing the root cause or trying to understand the root cause. So what do you believe are the root causes behind this hate mantra that Modi regime has adopted?
Okay, so everything that happens, it has some causes that the thing is happening right now. Similarly, the violence against Muslims in India is happening, and it has some reasons, some root causes in history. First of all, the Hindus' resentment towards the Muslim rulers in the medieval ages, and I think that hate still exists in the hearts of Hindus, and I think so they are taking revenge from the Muslims of India today. And secondly, during the colonial period, Britishers wanted to maintain their rule, and for that purpose, they adopted the policy of divide and rule. This divide and rule had created hatred among the different communities, and this hate is still continuing today. Thirdly, the emergence of Pakistan as an independent sovereign state in the name of Islam has also created, a hatred in the hearts of people. And lastly, I would say that the current violence that is going on against Muslims is because of the fact that it has become an electoral strategy of the nationalist Hindus party to do violence against Muslims.
So what I understood from your response is that not only there are historic reasons behind that,
Yes.
but it's also a part of their electoral strategy.
Yes, true.
But how the government of India, which we believe should ideally be an a government with egalitarian justice for all the people living in the country, how the government has so far responded to such hate crimes, because as you could see in the report, these hate crimes are only rising in India.
Sabahat, let me ask you one question, that if you were in India and if you were the Prime Minister, what would you do? Would you want that there should be violence in your country?
I would not, absolutely.
Would you want to encourage anti-communal rights between your people?
Not.
Yes, definitely you will not, but expecting such positivity, such fair play and justice from the BJP government is like living in a fool's paradise. BJP, if we look at the election manifesto of BJP, we will come to know that its election manifesto was mainly based on the principles of anti-Muslims agenda. And Hindus, they are in majority, they were attracted by this manifesto and they voted BJP for that purpose. Not only that, it has infiltrated even the independent institutions like police and courts, and they have given free hands to the nationalist people to harass and attack Muslim minorities.
And when we talk about the political parties, because obviously BJP is not the only party, India does not enjoy a one-party system. These are multiple parties, and they have their own historical legacies. So why the other political entities are not interfering in this situation or not making it a part of their electoral strategy to overcome the violence that Narendra Modi and his BJP is trying to inculcate into the Indian society?
Okay, so if you are talking about political parties, yes, there are multiple political parties in India, but specifically there are two main political parties. One is BJP and the other is Congress. And yes, political parties do play a very important role in inciting or preventing a particular violence. In case of India, I would say that BJP, that is in government, it is least concerned in the violence against Muslims. And while even I believe that it is even inciting the violence against Muslims, it is happy, it is seeing everything with its own eyes, but it is not doing anything. It is even encouraging the violence against Muslim. And secondly, if you are talking about Congress, I do not see, like they are hypocrite. If you are talking about Congress, I believe that it is just a hypocritic party. When it was in rule in 1978, in 1979 particularly, two incidents of violence took place. One was in 24 October 1978 and one was from March to April 1979. There were communal riots against Muslims, but Congress at that time was in rule, but it was silent. And now it is saying that we will bring peace, we will bring that secular India again. That is all lies. In reality, no such things exist.
I understand what you are saying. You don't have hopes from the current political system, but ideally speaking, as a student of political science, or taking it from a utopian scenario, what do you believe, what role could ideally these political entities could have played to overcome such crisis to unfold?
Okay, if we look at India, India is the biggest, one of the country that has biggest population in the world, in the South Asia particularly, and it has almost 760 languages, and it has more than 6 religions. So if we are talking about a big India, India is big because they had a stance that it is a secular India. India is accepting everyone, India is accepting every religion, India is accepting every culture, every language. But if we now look at India, it is not a secular India, it is just a Hindu Rashtra, and sooner or later it will disintegrate into pieces like what happened to subcontinent in 1947. Other than that, if you asked me that ideal, what can be done ideally, then yes, we can, the current government can educate the masses about the diversity, about the beauty of diversity, and to respect all religions, cultures and languages. Secondly, we all know that media is an important tool for creating awareness, for spreading education. Their media can also play an important role in telling people that what is right and what is wrong. They should not give a self-check to the politicians for what wrong they are doing. And thirdly, political leaders, of course, are very important to play a role in this regard. But I don't think so that their political leaders...
So you think their media is not also playing the role
No.
that it ideally should have played
Yes.
as an independent entity?
Yes.
Uruj, when we talk about the international community,
Okay.
whenever there is any crisis unfolding, whenever there are human rights violation, be it Kashmir, be it Gaza, be it other parts of the world, be it Bosnia, Herzegovina in the past, We always use the word international community.
Yes.
And when we say that, perhaps we mean the powerful nations on earth that decide the fate and fortune of the rest of the nations. Now, why international community has been silent at large, and what role ideally do you believe they should have played to stay neutral, or to remind the rest of the world that they are equally concerned?
Okay, so in international politics, there is a term used, influence and economy. If you are influenced through if you are influencing the world through your economy, your bad deeds are ignored. Similarly, is the case with India. International community is continuously seeing that what India is doing to its minorities, but international community is silent about it. One thing other that India is the biggest emerging economy, even it is the largest fifth economy, and some analysts are even predicting that it would soon surpass England and it would become the fourth largest economy of the world. So if your economy is growing, who will dare to tell you that you should do this and you shouldn't do this? And if you are asking me ideally that what international community can do, then yes, they can have diplomatic talks with the Indian authorities and tell them that you people are doing wrong with the minorities. Other than that, this issue can be highlighted in international platforms to attract the attentions of many people, and this is
and lastly, would you tell me that while you have appreciated the fact that Indian economy is blossoming
Yes.
at the moment, they are doing surprisingly good,
Yes.
is it at large, is that the violence against minorities at large affecting India's social fabric from a macro perspective?
Yes, definitely it is affecting the social fabric of India. Like, you know, if any Sabahat, if you know that if violence against minorities is happening anywhere in the world, that there is, you know, there is no stability in that region, there is no peace in that country. If you are looking at the economy of India, you will see that it is not affecting the economy of India. But so there is social hatred, there is social division, there is no trust among communities, and there is always violence in India. But I believe people are saying that it is not going to affect the economic fabric of India, but what I believe is that today it is not affecting the economy of India. But later on it will affect the economy of India, because the foreign investor, the foreign countries, they will not invest in a country where there is no stability. So I believe that sooner or later it will also affect the economy of India.
Thank you very much, Uruj Anwar Khan, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, Uruj has told us that in her valued and learned opinion, if the issues of the society at large are not addressed, she's afraid that the economic progress that India is making at large as an economy, as a country, rather as one of the leading economies in the world, will not have long-lasting effects. Another very important point that you highlighted is that remaining stick to the constitutional values of secularism. As India has a secular constitution, they call themselves a secular democracy. She's afraid that if India does not stay as a secular state going forward, and she used the word Hindu Rashtra, if it keeps moving forward as a Hindu Rashtra, perhaps this will have a drastic impact on the political system at large as well. The second topic of our program, ladies and gentlemen, is the rising energy crisis in Pakistan. The prices of energy are rising, be it electricity, be it natural gas that is delivered through pipes, be it LPG or CNG. These are two different kinds of fuels that are used domestically by the domestic consumers, one for the cars and the other one for the kitchen, are also rising. Now, these prices are not rising for any other reasons but purely driven on the fact that devaluation has almost taken a brunt out of Pakistan's economy, or have taken a toll on the value of the rupee. Rupee's value has depreciated to such a remarkable extent that it has surpassed the expectations of many critics and commentators who keep frequently talking about such issues. And we have invited a number of experts on this issue in our program as well. Now, the global lender IMF has set forth some conditions while paying out Pakistan the last tranche of $1 billion, $1,000 million. which cannot be ignored. And the government, the interim government that Pakistan has at the moment, Prime Minister took a notice of it, and he had a long meeting with his cabinet members and then announced that the government is unable to provide any immediate relief. The best relief he has committed is that the same bills will be paid on installment. How long this is going to stay like that, how long it is going to be the similar situation. I have invited Usama Rizvi, one of the leading experts, who speaks in our show about, and on many other platforms, he speaks about the energy-related matters. So, Usama, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Usama, before we talk about energy in particular, tell us about the macroeconomic picture of the country at large so that we can connect it with the crisis that we have in energy's market in hand.
That is a very pertinent point to start, I would say. If you look at the macroeconomic picture of the country, it is in dire straits, especially after the Ukrainian war. Things have gone pretty bad in terms of food prices, in terms of overall inflation, in terms of the political crisis, which was a result of the economic crisis, actually. Inflation is at its decade record high level. Food price inflation is even more than the CPI, what is known as Consumer Price Index. And then we have supply chain issues. The rupee depreciated around 300% in the past 6 to 7 years, which is an extraordinary amount of depreciation. Amidst this, our imports have stayed the same, unfortunately, because of the import-led model. And it wasn't until there were import restriction imposed that we sort of saved ourselves from total bankruptcy. So Pakistan is operating in a highly inflationary environment. This is because the whole world is operating in a very high inflation environment. And consequently, we have been suffering from its consequences, as we will discuss right now.
Usama, are we not caught in a quagmire? Because to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, people are buying more currency because they are afraid of devaluation by the virtue of them selling their local currency and buying the international one. The rate of USD is going higher. When the rate of USD is going higher, it's becoming more difficult for us to open LCs to convince the international creditors. And is this the cycle that we are stuck in? And if so, do you see any stoppage in that in the near future? Would anything be stopping the cycle at large?
No, once again, it's very important to understand the whole context. So as you mentioned, we rightly seem to be stuck in a vicious cycle, in a negative feedback loop, I would say, wherein that, so if we take out the numbers, let's just not discuss numbers at the moment. Let's just discuss the core reason, the holistic reasons behind this. It's a crisis of confidence in reality. So a country's currency, a country's at which it is going to get in bonds or money from international investors, all of that depends upon the confidence international investors, international financial institutions, or international banks have in that country's economic future. And we all know that our economic future, let alone our political future and overall image, has been botched recently by many a crisis happening at the same time. And that is the core reason that we, when I say we, it means the consumers, we are trying to do what naturally everyone would do in this. We're trying to find safe havens. One of that is dollar, which, as you've just mentioned, has now touched record high at 330 rupees or something like that. So why is that happening? Because we don't have confidence in the future. We don't see anything in the near future. We don't see that all of this, somebody would save us from this disaster that we have created ourselves. And that is why we are buying dollars, we're buying gold, and that is driving the price up, further exacerbating our very own issues. So that is indeed the very definition of a vicious cycle. And to answer the next part of your question, I don't think there are any short-term fixes to this. Because everything has an opportunity cost. If you delay a policy decision, and if you delay many policy decisions, you will have to bear the cost. That is very simple. There is no other way of saying that.
Usama, many of the people are now protesting against IMF, International Monetary Fund, and they say that it is IMF that has made these policies and have given it to the government of Pakistan, taking advantage of our fragile economic situation. While I don't know what exactly has been decided between the two sides, can you tell me at large what is the primary thing that stops government to provide immediate relief? What would unplease IMF if government tries to provide an immediate relief to the citizens?
So in the case of Pakistan, it is very simply the lack of funds. We have a balance of payment crisis, the one that Sri Lanka had recently, and it defaulted, the one Argentina had recently, Zimbabwe had, Ghana, Lebanon. So we, in effect, the amount of money coming in the country is less than the amount of money going out of the country or within the country. The expenditures exceed our revenues. And that is why Pakistan cannot, for instance, right now, do anything to curtail the consumer electricity bills. And now you talk about IMF. So it's very easy to find a scapegoat. The thing is, we go to IMF. The IMF does not come to us. I can speak about an hour for how bad or how I can critique IMF on a lot of places. But I really don't know the reason that why should we be doing that, because all of this is our domestic responsibility. IMF has a lot of downside to its policies, but I will not be criticizing them right now. This is a crisis of our own making.
And Osama, importantly, there are many taxes that have been levied on the same utility bills that we have been receiving, which has clearly caused a spike in the bills. And there are people who are talking about and asking now questions. We have taxes, then more taxes, then extra taxes, then extraordinary taxes. So can you broadly tell us what these taxes are and why the government cannot reconsider? What is restricting the government from reconsidering levying so many taxes on electricity bill?
So for any country, there are 2 or 3 main resources for revenue, right? One of them, the biggest of them, is accumulating taxes. Pakistan's tax to GDP ratio on a national level is about 9.8%. For any developing country or a country of a decent economic standing, it should be around anywhere between 15 to 16%. And now, so this was the holistic point of view. Now coming to electricity sector. Pakistan, I would like to quote 2 figures. So for instance, Pakistan loses around 926 billion rupees in the form of electricity theft. We have lost around 520 billion rupees in the form of transmission and line losses. Now, this vacuum, this fiscal vacuum has to be filled. How are we going to fill it? By increasing the cost of electricity. So essentially, you and me and all of the consumers are now paying for the ineptitude of the government, for the delayed in policy making, for not taking action at the right time. So there is no reason, there is no other way for the government to stay afloat, to avoid a bankruptcy. They have to increase the prices. And currently, out of the 5 parts of our electricity bill, so 51 rupees, I think 51, 52 is the unit price. Out of that, 31% is tariffs, the taxes we pay to the government. So as you can see, it is a huge amount.
Osama, but completely letting go of the theft will only make more people thief. They will start stealing electricity, because if everyone who is stealing electricity, instead of recovering from them, the only option is always opted to further tax those who are paying already. Don't you think it will be counterproductive?
I mean, if there is only one way that this can be resolved. Pakistan, as I've just mentioned the figures, we have to stop the theft. We have to stop the transmission and line losses in that way, and we have to make sure that the basis on which we buy electricity from the IPPs, and we should all really be talking about it as well, that needs to be renegotiated. And it will only be possible after a holistic overhauling of the policy, especially in the value supply chain of electricity or power generation, that we will be able to resolve this conundrum. The answer to why I have not been doing this or that, especially in terms of the electricity bills, do not lie only in the power generation sector. We'll have to look beyond those sectors as well. We've lost about 22,300 gigawatt hours in 1 year in just line losses. That is half of our total energy generation capacity. How can we imagine doing anything else until unless we solve this very important issue?
And you also spoke about agreements that we have with independent power producers. This policy is also criticized at large. And we are also told that Pakistan cannot renegotiate with these IPPs because of certain contractual bindings that we have with them in place while these contracts were made. So can you just give us a gist of these agreements and what is so restricting us from renegotiating these agreements altogether?
Absolutely. So I don't know what were the people who signed these contracts thinking at the moment of signing them, because they are absolutely, I mean, they're incredibly useless in that. So, for instance, one of the terms in the agreements with IPP is take or pay basis. It is what happens in that is that the seller, in this case the IPPs, are guaranteed a minimum amount of payment, whether the product they are selling, which is in this case electricity, is consumed or not. Now, in Pakistan, from the previous year, due to our cost of living prices, electricity consumption has been actually falling. This is very interesting to note, that electricity consumption has been falling in the country. However, the government is still paying the same amount of capacity charges to the IPPs. About 1.3 trillion rupees recently were paid to the IPPs. That is a huge amount. Half of our total circular debt. Our total circular debt is around 2.4, 2.5 trillion rupees. So this one term in the contracts makes no sense, that why would we go on take or pay basis? Secondly, there is no ceiling on the dollar indexation. So all of these payments are linked with dollar, and there is no ceiling to it. So for instance, God forbid, if dollar touches 600 rupees in the coming years, we would have to pay equal amount of money to the IPPs. So IPPs stand to benefit whatever happens, but consumers and the government, they are at the mercy of the international and national forces, and many of them are out of their control. So these are some, I would say, inane conditions that we have agreed upon.
And lastly, do you believe that there is a need to bring independent companies in distribution as well? Because essentially this was the state-owned, state-created old apparatus that has been outsourced to private discos, and even these discos are essentially government-owned entities, which are certainly restrained with their restricted with their capacity issues as well. Their employees are mostly the employees who were in previously serving in the state-owned monopolist department. So don't you believe there is a dire need to bring private sector enterprises that can help Pakistan to overcome what you just call line losses or theft in this industry?
I would agree with that statement, strongly agree with that. But once again, I think there is a need to do more public-private partnerships, PPPs. That model has been successful in many other countries, and it tends to work, especially in the context of Pakistan. Secondly, once again, I would like to repeat that this would be just one part of the solution. We will have to, as we've just discussed, renegotiate once these agreements are over. We have to do something. We have to take some action to renegotiate these absolutely absurd terms. We have to make sure that about half of our energy generation capacity, about 22,000 gigawatts, is not wasted just by transmission and distribution losses. We have to ensure that about 926 billion, which is half of the government subsidy that the government gave for electricity, is not wasted just because of electricity theft. So it has to be a holistic solution, but within that, this point definitely would take a lot of significance.
Thank you very much, Osama, for being guest in our program today. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with second segment of program. Stay with us. Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, violence has again started to erupt in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is surprisingly a country that is not only doing economically very well, its progress is one of the best in all economies in the African continent, but also this country has many administrative challenges that it has tried, President Abiy Ahmed has tried to overcome. But there is an innate problem in this country which is embedded in its administrative system, and that is that it has 10 independent administrative systems with 10 independent militias and 10 independent small militaries, then it has another federal military which serves under the president of the country. All of this together has given birth to another wave of violence that has claimed almost 200 lives in Ethiopia. Many people connect this with the insurgents that started in year 2020 with the Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, a militia that actually fought against the capital, and then the federal government responded back with various attacks from the Air Force as well as by the military. What exactly is happening in Ethiopia and how this all is interconnected to what has happened in Ethiopia in the past, and surprisingly why all of this is happening despite the fact that the country is doing economically very well. To respond to all these questions, I have invited Rabab Louis. Rabab is an analyst of African affairs. She's a journalist and joining me on Skype from Tunisia. Rabab, I welcome you to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Rabab, why violence has started to erupt in Ethiopia at the moment?
Everything started last April when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered that the militia should reintegrate the military or the police, something that the Fano militia didn't accept. And that's why clashes started between the Fano militia and the military. And for example, since July, many violence occurred, and at least 180% were killed, according to the United Nations. And at the same time, last week, the president of Amhara region resigned among these clashes between the military and the militia, and the state of emergency has been announced since then.
Rabab, many people say that all of this is also interconnected to what had happened in the country back in 2020. So do you also connect the dots the same way as many critics are doing elsewhere?
It's awkward, but this Fano militia that is in hostility with the military right now used to be a friend of the military. They even backed the military during the civil war against Tigray militia. So during 2 years of civil war, Fano militia and the military used to be allies, and they backed the military. But right now, some of them felt betrayed when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced and ordered this reintegration of militia to the military or the police.
And is it also because of the fact that the regional system that I was talking about in the introduction of this segment is also very challenging to be administrated? Tell us more about it.
Ethiopia has 11 administrative regions, and every region has its own government, its own militia. So that's why there is a lot of, let's say, tension between the regions and between the different ethnicity in the region. That's why also every region wants to keep its own militia, and an order from the Prime Minister to reintegrate the military or the police is seen as something that will weaken this militia. They want to keep their militia, their own militia, independent from the military or the police. And that's why we are seeing these clashes, this time not in Tigray region but in Amhara. It's the same thing every time. You have the clashes between the military and the militia, which belong to the region and to the different government of the state.
So if I understand you correctly, like many other critics, you also believe the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to be responsible for unfolding of such a massive crisis?
I think he is responsible of this situation. First of all, I would like to remind you that he came to the power in 2018 after 3 decades of TPLF govern. This TPLF party governed the country during 3 decades, and since 2018, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was elected, and since then he tried to dismantle the party. He even considered this party, the TPLF, as a terrorist group. And since then, the civil war occurred in 2020. That's why I would say that he's responsible, because I think dialogue is better. War is not a solution. I mean, Ethiopia needs a real dialogue between different ethnicity and different regions, and considering a group or a party as a terrorist group won't solve the problem finally. And that's why we saw this civil war with all this crime war, all this violence and rapes during this civil war, especially in Tigray regions. And it's all the time the same problem, clashes between military and militia, and there is no dialogue between both of them. That's why I would say that, yes, he's the first responsible, I would say. Although he had the Nobel Prize, because he finally fixed the problem with Eritrea, but he wasn't able to fix this tension between different regions and between regions and the government.
So having a different military and a different militia, doesn't it look like to be the same problem that Sudan is facing, where a federally administrated militia is fighting against a federally capped army, and both of them have made it so difficult that now Egypt has been asked to formally step in and resolve. Don't you see a similarity in this context between the two countries?
A lot of common points between Sudan and Ethiopia in this issue. They have this militia and military clashes all the time. There is no dialogue between them, and always the source is the ethnicity. There is no dialogue, and there is no negotiations, and there is no, let's say, a peace talk between these different groups. Right? So yes, there is a lot of common points between these two countries.
While talking about Ethiopia at large, I also told my viewers about the economy that is doing surprisingly well. So tell us how good the economy is at the moment, as of now when we speak.
Well, Ethiopia today is one of the fastest growing economy in the region, and the forecast shows that it might be around 7.9% of economic growth in 2023 to 2024. But at the same time, and regarding this economic growth, at the same time, the country is suffering from a huge poverty rate and significant rate of unemployment. For example, they have around 2 million employed civilian in Ethiopia. So poverty is still an issue, unemployment is still an issue, and also these clashes between the military and militia is still an issue. At the same time, let's say they are doing better and better in the economy, but a country to progress needs political stability first. So I don't see that they can make this huge economic growth when they are still struggling with this political instability and these clashes between the military and the different militia in the country.
Amid all of what we have discussed, all the issues that we have underscored thus far, are you still optimistic about the future of this country?
I'm always optimistic, honestly, but as I told you, in this case, when you have a lot of militia and a lot of ethnicity, the solution is always the dialogue. The solution is always talk and negotiations. I would say, yes, I'm optimistic, but we need a real dialogue, a real peace talk, let's say.
Thank you very much, Rabab.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, another African country has started observing the initial signs of being a military coup. And as we have done back-to-back programs on the trend, on the trajectory of African countries coming out of democracy and falling into the lap of absolute abject military control, another recent inclusion is the country called Gabon. Now, Gabon's perhaps has not been formally taken over by the military, but the military has suspended its state institutions, declaring that the results of the recent elections cannot be accepted. To talk about this issue, I have invited an expert. His name is Ahmed Zaki, who frequently appeared in my show and is joining us on Skype from Somaliland. Zaki, I welcome you to the show. Tell us what has led to this coup, or should we call it a coup or not? What has happened in this very beautiful country of Gabon?
As the military coup leaders, those who call themselves as a transitional authority, they said that the election which had taken place last week in Gabon was rigged and it was not valid. If I give you a background of the election have taken place in 30th August. The declaration of the result came on 30th August. Before the period of the declaration, the opposition leader, he already declared the victory. Later on, the election commission said that 64.29% Ali Bongo win, the former president, which lost the power through the coup. They said that the military, they said that this family make the nation paralyzed. They were ruling for almost 57 years. It is since the independence of the country, 1967, they took the power, Bongo family, and they are leading the country. The country is rich on oil, and it's one of the closest allies in Western countries, especially France, because it was a former French colony. So you can understand the background of the country's wealth and the background of the administration of the country.
I understand what you say, but how has been the response of the international community, and what exactly is the situation on ground as of now when we speak?
Current situation, as your third question, the current situation on the ground is that the people felt quite relieved because they were fed up. Look, the country is very rich in oil, but more than 50% of the population are living under severe poverty. Imagine the country have not too much population. The total population of the country is 2.4 million people. It's less than the population of Islamabad, and they are very rich in oil. And still, the people the Gabonian people are still not having access to the quality education. They don't have government services, and the elite who receive the wealth, they are investing either in Europe or in America. And the people who are leading the coup, the leader of the coup is the security guard of the president. He was the leader of the chief of the security guard of the presidential office, and he by himself, he have multi-billions wealth from the oil-rich country. The government server, who his salary, if you all calculate it, cannot reach even $100,000. Now he have 2.5 million wealth house in Gabon, and more than that he have in France and USA. So you can understand the elite class of that country. They are looting and they take all the wealthy, while the rest of the nation is suffering. It's extreme poverty.
Zaki, can we draw a straight line between what has happened in Niger very recently versus what is happening in Gabon? Because we have seen a military coup there as well.
It have a lot of similarities to the other coups which has taken place in Western and Central Africa. The common factor which they are sharing is that they are former French colony, number one. Number two is that the anti-French involvement in politics of Africa, that's the sentiment which the people of Gabon is sharing with the other peoples in Africa, Central Africa, which have experienced the same kind of a coup. So the increase in hate and rejection, the rejection of the involvement of the French government by involving their economic factor and their political manipulation of African countries.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Saki, for being guest in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, as we have told you earlier as well, Francophone is on the decline, and the resentment of people in Africa is rising against the leaders that have been more loyal toward France, that is the former colonial master. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.